thousands or even, God forbid, tens of thousands of victims if nuclear terrorists manage to inflict wholesale death in a U.S. city somewhere, someday. 5 people surrounded the gurney. Their faces, and even their genders, were masked by goggles, respirators, and baggy biohazard suits, whose white Tyvek sleeves and legs were sealed with duct tape to black rubber gloves and boots. One of the white-garbed figures held a boxy beige instrument in one hand, and in the other a metal wand that was connected to the box. As the wand swept a few inches above the head, then the chest and abdomen, and then each arm, the box emitted occasional clicks. As the wand neared the left knee, though, the clicks became rapid, then merged into a continuous buzz. Having spent my childhood shivering through the Cold War, practicing duck and cover during civil defense drills, as if my wooden school desk could shield me from a Soviet hydrogen bomb, I was well acquainted with the urgent clicking of a Geiger counter. As the wand hovered, the other 4 people leaned in to inspect the knee. One took photographs. 2 others began spraying the body with a soapy-looking liquid and scrubbing the skin, paying particular attention to the knee. As they scrubbed, one of them removed a small orange disc about the size of a quarter and handed it to the team leader. A tiny, safely encapsulated speck of radioactive strontium. Enough to trigger the Geiger counter, but not enough to pose any hazard, simulated contamination on the corpse. Once the scrubbing was complete, the technician with the Geiger counter checked the knee once more. This time the instrument ticked lazily, signaling normal background radiation. At a sign from the team leader, the body was wheeled out of the tent and returned to the trailer that held the other 14 corpses, which had already undergone similar screening and decontamination procedures. One by one, the Tyvek-suited figures rinsed off beneath what had to be the world's coldest shower, a spray of soapy water mixed with alcohol, a last-minute addition necessitated by the day's sub-freezing temperatures. The team's contamination, like that of the bodies, was simulated, but the goal was to make the training as realistic as possible, despite the added challenges provided by the bitter cold. Only after the shower did the goggles and respirators come off. My red-tressed, freckled graduate assistant, Miranda Lovelady, emerged from one of the white suits, followed shortly by Art Bohannon, the resident fingerprint expert at the Knoxville Police Department. The team leader was Hank Strickland, a health physicist, one who specialized in radiation and radiation safety. Hank worked at a facility in Oak Ridge called REACS, the Radiation Emergency Assistance Center and Training Site, that sent medical response teams to help treat victims of radiation accidents anywhere in the world. But Hank, like Miranda and Art, was here today as a volunteer team member of DMORT, the Disaster Mortuary Operational Response Team, formed in the early 1990s to identify victims of mass disasters such as airliner crashes and hurricanes. DMORT was part of the U.S. Public Health Service, but the teams were staffed by volunteers with specialized and even macabre skills. Their ranks included funeral directors, morticians, forensic dentists, physicians, forensic anthropologists, police officers, and firefighters, people accustomed to working with bodies and bones. DMORT volunteers, including some of my students, have performed heroic service at Ground Zero after the World Trade Center bombings. They'd also spent 2 months recovering and identifying bodies after Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans and the Gulf Coast in 2005. Art himself had spent 6 weeks in Louisiana after Katrina, lifting fingerprints and palm prints from bloated, rotting corpses. One body was that of a man who had been trapped in an attic by rising waters. More than 100 days after the man drowned in the attic, how ironic was that, Art and a colleague managed to lift a print and ID the man. DMORT teams were acquainted with death and decay, but this training exercise represented a grim new twist to DMORT's mission, a response to the nightmare of September 11, 2001. DMORT's Weapons of Mass Destruction team had been formed shortly after 9/11, in grim recognition of the fact that terrorists who would turn civilian airliners into flying bombs might also attempt acts of wholesale chemical, biological, or nuclear terrorism.